This is Rocky Truth, and you're watching the Rocky Truth podcast. My mom, stepmom, she dropped it. She drove off, and we're in downtown Fort Myers, and my brother he looks up at me, and he says, "Bro, what are we gonna do?" And I tell him, "Come with me." Uh, and the only thing I knew to do at the time was go to a friend of ours' house who was, friends with us while we were in school. Two brothers, and we we ended up walking, and I believe we put our bags somewhere and hid them until we could get, uh, you know, until we could find out where we were going. And then I called, and we got picked up by my friend's mom. And then we went back and got our bags, and she was in complete, just she was just overwhelmed. She was like, "I can't believe that just happened to you two. What are you gonna do?" And I said, "I don't know, but I know that I gotta take care of my brother now." And he was in, we were both going to school, but I had already been telling myself that I had a feeling something drastic was going to change, and that I was probably going to have to step away from that, or there's something that was going to change in my life as far as everyday curriculum, and it was going to be drastic. So I asked her, if what she could do for us, and we ended up being able to stay there for a few days. And what I what I ended up doing was I linked up with a couple of friends of mine who were affiliated with some you know organization, and they were gang members, so to speak. And what I ended up doing was, my brother, I would go at night, and I would do things that are definitely not law abiding, and were definitely criminal, and to the extent of, you know, having to, great levels of violence. And I seen these things at, such a so rapidly and daily. And I was just like, I became accustomed to that type of stuff. I wouldn't say comfortable, but in a way it was an everyday thing. And what, in my mind, I didn't even know how I could become used to this stuff, but I did. And what I would do was, my people in the neighborhood of where we were living at growing up, we went back to that area, and I would tell people, I would take my brother, 9-year-old brother, with me, and I was making cash at night doing these things that I, was mentioning before, that was pretty, pretty drastic. And I took my brother to different people's houses that went to school they had children that went to school with him. And this is in 1994, I would go to their houses and, because my brother would play with their children in the neighborhood and whatnot. And I would go to them and I would knock on the door and I would ask them what, my brother goes to school with one of your children or your child, and if you would please allow him to sleep somewhere in your house or on a pallet somewhere and just see him off on the school bus in the morning, I'll pay you $50. And I did that for as long as I could every single night, which meant every single night I was going back to the streets and I was doing whatever I was, told to do by my higher ups. And it became violent. And what happened was I started getting in trouble because it started involving guns and shootings and, a lot of violence, a lot of physical violence, a lot of fighting, just a lot of people getting injured, and then drugs were coming around, and so I got caught up. And my brother, while I ended up getting locked up and going to programs, and my brother, they placed him in foster care. Well, I was in foster care. I mean, I was in the programs for a while, approximately a year, I think, the first time. And when I got out, my brother was in a foster home, and I was, I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was probably 16 at the time, and I would go to see him, and the foster homes that he was at, they weren't very positive. He was in temporary foster homes because it was hard time. Some people would want him, and then he would tell them about his brother, and then they wouldn't want me because I was older and he was younger, so they would want him and not me. Well, this didn't work because even our caseworker knew. He said, if you don't take one, if you don't take both, then it's not gonna work, because if they would take him and not me, he would just run away to me, wherever wherever I was at. So this continued for, multiple times of him running away and me just trying to stay together, because if you remember, my dad, the last thing he said was, promise me you two to stay together. So we had that instilled in our heads and in our hearts that that's what we were going to do. And I like I said, I got incarcerated again, and I got out, and I was 18 at this time, and he was still in a foster home. And when I got out, I had received some money from an annuity policy from my parents being deceased, and me knowing what I know now, being knowing not what I know now, but as at the time, what I knew was I had been hardened by the streets. I had a street mentality. I had a hustle up type mentality, and I got to go get this money for me and my brother. So, and from lack of proper knowledge, I got out, received the money at 18. I went down, like I said, we were in Fort Myers still. I went down to Miami, and I had purchased a good bit of cocaine. And I came back to Fort Myers, and my brother was in a program at the time because he had got himself in trouble in the meantime. And I was starting to see, like, man, I hope this doesn't consume us, but I'm already seeing that it's things are not going great, and I'm thinking that maybe if I make this money, that it's going to be a way to give me and him something, and you know, he had been hopped around from school to school by the time, so he didn't have any structure anymore, and he was just had so much hate in his heart because of what all the losses he had taken and the being pushed around from home to home and not being with his brother and missing me, being that we, you know, at this point in time, we were all we knew. It wasn't, there wasn't nobody like that we were talking to that, you know, we could only get so close to. So I got out and I got this, you know, I got the cocaine, and I went and I went to an adult entertainment club, and I ended up trying to move some of the stuff there, and you know, the cocaine there, and to make money, and I'm thinking make money quick, and I'm thinking that this is where it's at and what is going on, and I'm still talking to the people that I was before in the streets that I was affiliated with, and I'm trying to put this plan together, which Lord knows at this point in time that it wasn't a good plan. So if I get close with the manager of the club, and the owner, which was the owner at the same time, and there was an open partnership. There was a half the partnership of the club that was becoming available, and so um, I took it. So now I'm part owner of an adult entertainment club. I have these drugs, and I'm on my way to solving me and my brother's problems of stability in my eyes, and I'm going to make all this work. Well, I'll tell you what, it didn't, and it didn't work out because what I didn't mention was right before I got locked up the last time, I got shot 3 times, and it was related to who I was around and who I was with, and it was pretty bad, and it was, you know, that's what got me into the trouble that I did to get incarcerated the last time. So when I got out and got this um, nightclub and stuff, it was people that knew I got out, and they were still lingering around, you know, like in the area, and everybody had heard that I got out, and so it became to where I got involved in the streets again due to what had happened to me, and the girls that I were around at the time that were working at the club, and I ended up living with 2 of them, and they were headfirst into everything, so that brought me into everything, and it was just a nosedive after that. A year after that, I had lost pretty much all the money I had made. I had a bad drug habit. My little brother had got out of his program, and he had started hanging out, and you know, he wasn't really doing too bad, but he wasn't doing too good, and I was at the point where I didn't know what to do. So I ended up getting in trouble again. And in the meantime, while my brother's at this program, though, before he got out, you know, I would go visit him, and we would talk about things, and I would make sure he was okay, and gave him any of the money he needed, made sure he had the nicest of clothes and shoes, and I was just, you know, anything that he came first. He came before anything. And I just went down the wrong road to get it. And it was like he was he was at a point where he told me, he was just like, bro, I love you no matter what happens. Just know that I don't forget what Dad told us that day. And we would always remind each other of what was happening. And it became so depressing. Like, it became so dark. And we're just wanting our family life back, man. Like, it was just, man, we're running around, and I get involved with drugs, and the people that I was in the street with, I've been shot already. He had people trying to conform him to their family ways, and they're not wanting me to be around because I'm a bad influence. And he's like, no, my brother's the best thing I've ever. My brother's everything to me, and they're not understanding that. So, we're fighting against the world, and we have a lot of hate in us because our family, we was like, man, our mom, like, she been gone, and like, my dad, he just died. I heard, grandparents and on both sets were gone. It was rough, man, and we were rebelling against everything. And I ended up finding out that I went back to jail. Okay, so now I'm an adult. I go to jail now in Lee County in Fort Myers, and my brother, he's in a foster home at a time, and they take him. They're wanting to adopt him, and they take him to Seattle, Washington, move there. So my brother, he takes a loaf of bread from up there in Seattle, Washington, a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, gets a bus ticket, and he gets on a bus and goes across the country to get back to me. And I was still in jail for 3 more days when he arrived, and he stayed outside of the jail for 3 days till I got out. And I tell you what, he it was so sad. Like, you weren't going to separate us. We were just, we were trying to live by what we were asked to do. And I had to go to some aftercare of some sort. I can't remember offhand, but it was residential. So my brother, in the meantime, like, I had to stay there. So my brother, in the meantime, my mom's brother, my uncle Joey, who had already was deceased, his wife, which was our Aunt Susie, she was living in Pensacola, Florida, and she had somehow reached out to Brendan, to my brother, and asked him if, you know, what our story was, what was going on, that she had heard that, we were caught in a bind down here with nobody, and would he like to come to Pensacola? And then when I got done with what I was doing, I would go to, I could move up there too. And it was like, from to my brother, he was tickled pink. He could see the, maybe a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and he said, yeah, I'll come up there and no problem. And can my brother come? Can he, and she's like, of course, when he gets out, of course he can come. And so he moved up to Pensacola, and I was doing what I was doing. And when I got done, I went up, I finished what I had to do, and I came up to Pensacola too. And that's when, that was a whole nother chapter of our life. Was and the reason why I say that, you know, I was happy. I'll say that I was happy at the move. At the move I was about to do to be with my brother, because I felt like it's a family member, a surviving family member, and you can't go wrong with when you don't. That's who we. She had reached out to us, and that was the key. And I was like, I couldn't see, because I knew that down here where I was at, I knew that down in Fort Myers, I was building quite a caseload with law enforcement, and I was, some things that had happened were still, not settled. They weren't finished. They weren't settled. There was some bad blood still going on. So I was like, if I'm gonna keep me and my brother alive and just keep everything copacetic, so to speak, I'm happy about this move, and keeping in mind that my brother comes before me, and so off to Pensacola I went.